You walk onto a used car lot. You spot the Japanese badge everyone swears by, and a mechanic who has worked on these for 30 years quietly shakes his head. Not that model, not that year. He won't say why in front of the salesman. Here is what I found after months of digging. The cars Japanese mechanics warn you away from are almost never broken. They are perfectly good machines caught in a trap most people outside Japan never see, a trap built into the law itself. And that trap is exactly why some of the most reliable cars on Earth get crushed while they still have hundreds of thousands of miles left in them. This is knowledge that lives inside Japanese repair shops. It gets passed from one mechanic to the next, spoken across an oil pan, almost never written down for outsiders like us. By the end, I am going to show you a document signed in June of 1951 that started all of this, and one single maintenance habit from Japanese taxi garages that let ordinary engines cross 600,000 miles. That last piece is the one that quietly changed how I treat my own car. It started for me in a cramped garage on the edge of Nagoya, where I stood watching an old mechanic wave off a nearly new sedan like the thing was cursed. And everything I dug up afterward works on the car sitting in your driveway right now. No special tools, no trip to Japan, no relocation, just a way of seeing that most of the world lost. So let me walk you through it exactly the way it unfolded for me, one piece at a time. The first thing I had to do was throw out the obvious answer, because when you hear that Japanese mechanics steer people away from certain cars, your mind goes straight to the simplest explanation. Those cars must be junk. They must break down. They must be the lemons hiding among the good ones. That is what I assumed too. And it is completely wrong. I went looking at the actual repair data, and it refused to cooperate with my theory. The cars the mechanics warned against were the same models that top reliability surveys year after year. We are talking about brands that regularly land at the top of long-term dependability studies in Britain, in Australia, in the United States. These are engines famous for shrugging off neglect. So why would the very people who repair them for a living tell a friend, quietly, do not buy that one? I sat with that contradiction for a long time. A car can be mechanically excellent and still be, in the words of one mechanic I spoke with, a bad car to own in Japan. Those are two completely different statements, and the gap between them is where the whole mystery lives. Here is the clue that finally cracked it open for me. When these mechanics said worst, they did not mean it would fail you. They meant it would cost you. The danger was never the engine. The danger was the bill that arrives, whether the engine is perfect or not. And once I understood that the threat was financial and not mechanical, a strange pattern jumped out of the data. In Japan, cars get thrown away young. Absurdly young. The average age of a car on Japanese roads is far lower than what you see in America, where the typical vehicle now runs past 12 years old and keeps going. Japanese cars, built to last longer than almost anything on the planet, were being discarded first. Perfectly healthy machines gone. That made no sense to me. A nation obsessed with craftsmanship, with not wasting, with making things last, was scrapping its most durable products faster than anyone. One piece clicked into place, and it immediately created a bigger, darker question. If the cars were fine, then something was reaching into people's wallets and forcing them to give up good machines on a schedule. Something was setting the clock. So I went looking for the clock. And that is where this stops being a story about cars and becomes a story about a system. The trail led me to a single piece of legislation. In June of 1951, Japan enacted the Road Transport Vehicle Act. Out of that law came a program that every driver in Japan knows by one word, shaken. It means, roughly, vehicle inspection. And on paper, it sounds perfectly reasonable, even admirable. It is a mandatory safety and roadworthiness check. But here is how it actually works, and this is where I felt the floor shift. A brand new car gets its first shaken after 3 years. After that, every single car must pass shaken every 2 years for the rest of its life, no exceptions. And this is not a quick glance and a sticker. It is an exhaustive teardown level inspection, and it comes bundled with taxes, mandatory insurance, and fees that all fall due at the same moment. I looked at the real numbers people were paying, and I understood the mechanic's head shake. A typical shaken bill runs somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 yen. In dollars, depending on the car and the year, that is often somewhere around $800 to $1,500, landing all at once every 2 years on top of everything else. And if the inspector finds anything worn, anything at all, a bushing, a brake line, a slightly leaking seal, that number climbs fast, because in the older or more complex cars, the parts and labor to satisfy the inspector cost more. Suddenly, the phrase worst car had a precise meaning. A worst car, to a Japanese mechanic, is a car that will fail, shaken expensively, a car whose parts are pricey, a car with a complicated transmission that inspectors and owners fear, a car where a single inspection cycle could cost you more than the vehicle is now worth on paper. And now I could feel the outline of something deliberate. Because think about who benefits when a perfectly good car becomes a financial liability every 2 years. Think about who profits when the smartest move for an ordinary family is not to repair the car they own, but to give up and buy a newer one. The shaken system, sold as safety, had quietly become the most effective machine ever built for pushing people into new cars they did not need, and I was not the only one to notice. But shaken alone did not fully explain the pattern, because a shaken bill, painful as it is survivable. Plenty of people would still keep a reliable car and pay it. So I kept pulling the thread, and I found a second mechanism sitting right behind the first, working in the same direction, and this one felt even more targeted. This is the part that genuinely made me angry when I understood it. Layered on top of shaken is Japan's annual automobile tax, and buried inside that tax is a penalty most foreigners have never heard of. Once a gasoline car passes 13 years of age, the government raises its annual tax. The rate jumps by roughly 15% for older gasoline vehicles, with diesel and other categories hit on their own timelines. They call it, in plain terms, a heavier tax on aged vehicles. Read that again slowly, the way I had to. The car does not have to pollute more, it does not have to fail any test, it does not have to be unsafe. It simply has to turn 13 years old, and the state increases the cost of keeping it every single year, forever. The message could not be clearer. Old cars are punished for the crime of still existing. So now stack the two systems on top of each other and watch what happens to a normal Japanese family. You own a reliable car. It sails past 10 years, still running beautifully, exactly as its makers intended. Then shaken comes due $1,000 or more, then the 13-year tax penalty kicks in and your annual bill rises for no reason you can see. Then the next shaken looms. And a salesman right on cue offers you an easy trade towards something new, something that will not face the penalty for over a decade. What would you do? Most people do the rational thing. They let the good car go. And that, finally, was the answer to the question that had haunted me from that Nagoya garage. The mechanics were not warning against bad cars. They were warning against cars that were about to walk into these cost walls, cars where the trap was about to spring. Do not buy the one that turns 13 next year. Do not buy the one whose shaken will bankrupt the repair. That is what the head shake meant, and here's the piece that turned my stomach. All those discarded, healthy, low-mileage Japanese cars have to go somewhere. They do not vanish. They get loaded onto ships and exported by the hundreds of thousands to New Zealand, to Australia, to Africa, to Russia, to the Caribbean, to the United Kingdom. An entire global industry exists because Japan systematically discards cars that still have most of their life ahead of them. The waste is not an accident. The waste is the product. Now, I promised you this was not just a story to make you shake your own head, because at this point I hit a wall of my own. And maybe you are feeling it too. Maybe you are sitting there thinking, this is fascinating, but I do not live in Japan. I do not pay shaken. I do not have a 13-year tax breathing down my neck. So what does any of this actually do for me and the car in my driveway right now? I want to speak directly to you for a moment, because this next part is the part I built for you specifically, and it is the part that saves you real money starting this week. Here is the gift hiding inside all of this, and once I saw it, I could not unsee it. The single most reliable car market on earth is quietly flooding the rest of the world with mechanically excellent vehicles that were thrown away for reasons that have nothing to do with their condition. The cars are not tired. The system got tired of them, which means the used Japanese import, the one that came off a ship at 8 or 10 years old with astonishingly low mileage, is one of the great overlooked bargains available to an ordinary person. If you want to go deeper into all of this, the full picture of how these systems work and how to protect yourself from them, I put everything I uncovered into a book you can find linked in the description below. It is called Japanese Fix, and it is part of a larger series that includes Deep Japanese and The Full System, each one going further into the buried knowledge that the mainstream never recovered. Everything in this video is just the surface of what is inside those pages, and the maintenance framework alone is worth the read if you want your current car to outlast every assumption you have ever made about it. But the deeper gift is not about buying. It is about a way of thinking that these mechanics carry, and you can adopt it tonight without spending a dime. Because I asked myself the obvious follow-up. If Japanese cars get discarded so young, how do we know they can actually go the distance? And the answer lives in the one place where Japanese owners are forbidden from throwing cars away on schedule: the taxi garages. A Japanese taxi cannot be casually retired at 13 years. Those cars are worked relentlessly, and the fleets need every mile, and what came out of those garages is the proof that reshaped everything for me. Ordinary Japanese engines, the same ones sold to families, routinely cross 300,000 miles, 400,000 miles, and the legendary ones push past 600,000 miles, still earning their keep, not exotic engines. The plain, humble, mass-produced kind, the kind that might be under your hood. So the machines were never the limit, the system was the limit, and that told me the real treasure was never the car. It was whatever those taxi garages were doing to reach those numbers. Because if I could learn that, I would not need Japan, or Shaken, or any of it. I could apply it to the exact car I already own and make it outlast every assumption. That question is what led me to the final piece, the one I have been holding back, and I need to set it up properly, because it is almost too simple to believe. For weeks I assumed the taxi longevity had to come from something expensive, some special synthetic oil, some secret additive, some hardware the public never got. That is where the money would be, right? That is what the industry would hide. I was wrong again. And being wrong that many times is how I knew I was finally close to something real. What the long-running Japanese fleet garages practiced was not a product at all. It was a discipline, and it was almost embarrassingly old. It comes out of a broader Japanese approach to machines that predates the automobile entirely, the same mindset you find in the maintenance manuals of Japanese craftsmen and in the way traditional workshops treated their tools. In Japanese, it carries the spirit of a word you may have heard, one tied to continuous care and to never letting small problems grow. The mechanics had a phrase for the whole thing: care for the cold, and the machine will never grow old. Let me tell you exactly what it means, because it comes down to two habits, and you can start both this week. The first habit is the warm-up that the modern world talked us out of. Somewhere along the way, we were all told that idling is wasteful, and that modern engines need no warm-up, just start and drive. And technically, for the fuel system, that is true, but the taxi garages understood something the marketing left out. The real damage to an engine does not happen at high mileage. It happens in the first 60 seconds after a cold start, before the oil has climbed up and coated every surface. Metal on metal, dry, in the cold, over and over, thousands of times a year. That first minute is where engines quietly die young. So the fleets did something specific, and you can copy it precisely. On a cold morning, they started the engine and let it settle for just a short spell, not a long, wasteful idle, but enough for oil pressure to build and the fluid to begin moving. Then, and this is the crucial part, they drove gently for the first several minutes. No hard acceleration, no high revolutions, until the engine reached its normal operating temperature. They treated the first 2 miles of every single trip as sacred. Warm the cold, then work the machine. Do that faithfully, and you spare your engine the one kind of wear that actually kills it. The second habit is even simpler, and it is where the phrase about caring for the cold gets its second meaning. Those garages changed the oil not by some optimistic sticker interval, but early and religiously, and they never ever let it run low or dirty through a hard season. The oil is the blood. In the taxi world, the rule was closer to changing it around every 3,000 miles under hard city use, far sooner than most owners today are told is necessary. Clean oil, changed early, is the cheapest insurance a human being can buy, and it is the single most powerful thing standing between a 200,000-mile engine and a 600,000-mile one. Now, here is why I told you this was hidden. Neither of these habits sells you anything. There is no gadget, no subscription, no dealership visit. A warm-up costs nothing. Gentle driving for 2 miles costs nothing. An early oil change costs a few dollars more per year than a late one, and that is precisely why the knowledge faded from the mainstream, while the message that got amplified everywhere was the one that shortens a car's life and shortens the gap until you buy the next one. The document that anchored all this for me, the Road Transport Vehicle Act of June 1951, gave the world one clear lesson, if you read it the way a mechanic does. A car's real lifespan and a car's official, permitted, taxed, inspected lifespan are two completely different things. Japan legislated the second one down to force replacement. But the first one, the true one, is set by nothing more than how you treat the machine in the cold and how clean you keep its blood. The taxi garages preserved that truth by necessity, because they were the only ones the law would not let quit early. And now you hold exactly what they knew. So let me close the loop I opened at the very start, standing in that garage outside Nagoya. The mechanic waving off the nearly new sedan was not telling me the car was bad. He was telling me the car was about to be devoured by a system designed to devour it, and that no amount of engineering could save an owner who did not understand the trap. He was protecting a friend from a bill, not from a machine. And the deeper thing he was protecting, whether he said it out loud or not, was this. The car was never the problem. The car was a marvel. The problem was that we all forgot the difference between how long a machine can live and how long we are told it is allowed to live. Here is what I want you to carry away from everything I chased down. The most durable cars on earth are being thrown away in their prime, and the reasons have nothing to do with whether they still run, which means the machine in your driveway almost certainly has far more life in it than anyone has led you to believe, and you now know the two humble habits that unlock it. You did not lose your car's best years. You just got told a story that hid them from you, and today you took them back. I think you are the kind of person who was never satisfied with the surface answer. When someone tells you a good thing must be replaced, something in you asks why, and refuses to stop asking until it finds the machinery behind the advice. That instinct is rare now, and it is exactly the instinct that just walked you all the way to the bottom of this. So let me ask you something specific, and I really do want you to answer it. How old is the car sitting outside your home right now, and after everything you just learned, will you change how you treat it on the next cold morning? Tell me in the comments. Tell me the make and the mileage. I read them, and I want to see how many of you are quietly driving machines with hundreds of thousands of good miles still waiting. And if you feel what I feel, that there is a whole world of simple, honest, deliberately forgotten knowledge like this waiting to be dug back up, then come with me. This channel exists to recover exactly these buried methods, one investigation at a time, for the home, for your money, and for your health. Subscribe and stand with the people bringing this knowledge back into the light. Because the next thing I cracked open is even stranger than shaken. It is the Japanese household habit around a single kitchen ingredient, one that families in one specific region used for generations to make food last for months without a refrigerator, and the reason it works was hidden in a temple record I almost walked right past. I will show you that record next. Do not let anyone tell you the old way was the poor way. Often, it was the only way that ever really worked. If you've stayed with me this far, I'd love to have you closer. Inside my membership, I pick up right where we stopped, taking you deeper into this exact story. And there, you can ask me your own question directly, a real person, me, answering you myself. You won't be alone. Folks like you are already inside the Quiet Wisdom Circle. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime.